Man, that's exact description of today, but it's always a beautiful day here in the Live with Renk show, right? 269-441-9595 is the number. We'll be taking phone calls in that next segment because on air with me from the Michigan Chamber of Commerce is Wendy Block. Thanks, Wendy, for calling in. Appreciate that very, very much. I was just explaining to my listeners here in the state of Michigan and beyond what transpired with you guys and the other local business groups, and then what Myosha came out and how they responded. Why don't you kind of explain what pushed you guys to do what you did, what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it, and Myosha coming out in what appears to be, from my perspective, and I'm pretty blunt when I speak, lying by the case of Myosha, which scares me because Myosha has a lot of power. And if they're willing to lie on something so obvious, then what are they doing to Michigan businesses behind our backs? So good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, and thanks so much for having me. So it sounds like you've set this up really well with your listeners, but as mentioned, the Michigan Chamber, along with a number of our local and regional chambers, yesterday announced a new statewide coalition. And this kind of has to do with just the general business shutdowns. You know, a lot of time and attention has been spent on the restaurant restrictions and, the restrictions on bowling alleys and movie theaters and even retailers to a degree. But something that hasn't been really talked about that much until now is a rule that is in place that Myosha put into place. So a lot of these other restrictions were put into place by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. What we're talking about here is something, an office ban, essentially, that Myosha put in place going back to October. And actually, it went into place earlier than that through executive orders, but when those got struck down by the court, the administration shifted to using their powers under the Myosha statute. And so the Myosha rules, emergency rules, basically say that employers have to create a policy that prohibits in-person work for employees to the extent that their work activities can be feasibly completed remotely. So not a whole lot of gray here. This idea of like, if you are just, would be in the office doing computer work, you should be doing that from home. And employers have to have this obligation under this rule to demonstrate that the work can't be completed remotely. So, going back to March of last year, employers.
If I may, Wendy, I don't want to gloss over that. So people understand the burden of proof is on their employer, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The burden of proof is on the employer to prove that that person must be in the office.
Right. And so, a lot of employers, they have taken this really seriously, right? No one wants to be in violation of the law. And so you have a situation where many employees have been working from home since last March. So these emergency rules, though, they're set to expire on April 14th. So that's kind of why the timing of this announcement yesterday and our call for the governor to reconsider this rule and its kind of blanket requirement. And we're looking to other states and what's happening there. We can't find a single example of another state that has a rule that is this restrictive. And in fact, our colleagues in other states kind of look at us crosswise when we talk about us having this rule. They can't believe it. And we're just looking for some flexibility on this question. We know that many employers are eager to get employees back to work, but they recognize that they may have employees that are hesitant. They want to work with those employees and figure out a plan that works for them. Right now, they can't do that. And the employee who is, depressed or feeling isolated or feeling like they have no connection to their team, who's eager to come back, and they say to their employer, I'd like to come back in the office, the employer is in a situation of having to say, you can't do that because we have this blanket requirement in Michigan. So our call with these local chambers is for employers to put the safety protocols in place that they've been preparing for months now, with the PPE and the cleaning and everything, and to have those discussions with their employees about a return to work plan. And that's really our goal here is, for employers across the state, for individuals across the state, to speak out to the governor, to let them know that enough is enough and we need to have some additional flexibility on these restrictions, just as we've created some flexibility on the restrictions on restaurants and movie theaters, et cetera.
Did you get any response from the Whitmer administration? It's my understanding MIOSHA gave you a response, or the Whitmer administration, or both, that they're going to extend this rule.
Yeah, so kind of a few things have happened over the last several days, I think, as they got wind of this announcement. The first was they basically said, oh, no, that's not what the rule requires. And as we pointed out, you pointed out to your listeners, and we've subsequently pointed out to the press and others, is just the clear language of the emergency rule and their FAQ on this statement, on this requirement, saying, I'm not sure how you think there's a whole lot of gray here. And quite frankly, if there is, you should be telling people. You should be reissuing the FAQ. And after I think the press kind of started to push back and say, whoa, wait a minute. That's not really what this says, is it? They've shifted to say, well, it's very likely that we're going to extend this rule for another 6 months. And, I think for us, that just further solidifies the reason why we're speaking out now. And we're not prepared to just kind of take this as it is and just be like, oh, well, they're going to extend it, so throw up your hands in the air and go away. No, we think it's more important now than ever that people make their voices heard with the governor and with her team, because this is solely her and her team's jurisdiction. They're the only ones who have power on this. So, we're not unfairly targeting the governor, but this is firmly in the hands of the governor, her decision to make. And just calling on people to make their voices heard, to send those emails to the governor's office, to make those phone calls to her office. We know that the more the public, kind of speaks out on these things, the more likely they are to reconsider their current course of action.
Wendy, so I was correct to the extent that we can tell on my interpretation from what they said yesterday, that they said they argued its policy does, quote, not prohibit in-person work, end quote, which is completely opposite of their policy, correct? Am I missing something here?
Yeah, no, I don't think you are at all. I think they're trying to come up with some sort of creative answer to our calls for movement on this, and they're quite frankly, I think the press has done a good job of pushing back on that and saying, but it says here this. How are we misreading this? And they do seem to have backed away a little bit from that.
Did they respond directly to that question, or has that just kind of been thrown out there? It hasn't been asked directly of anybody yet.
Right. They've just kind of thrown it out there and walked away from it. But I've not heard. We've been doing a lot of radio and a lot of newspaper over the last 24 hours, and in the last little bit, they don't seem to be as relying on that argument as much as they had. Now they're just kind of shifting to, oh yeah, we're probably going to extend it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on air, Wendy. And again, I'll say it. I know you can't or don't want to, or maybe don't believe it, but that creed of answering is called lies. Thanks a lot for calling into the show, Wendy. Good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a great day. That's what it is. It's 'cause she had it in a more political, correct way, probably a better way, but it's creative answer. That just means another way to nicely say, in my humble opinion, a lie. What about you guys?
95.3 WBCK.